Hi, Patrick Sedivy here, and I want to talk to you about this clock for just a second. Notice the time. What time is it? It's the last 5 minutes before 12. I want you to imagine that this is the last 5 minutes before midnight on the last day of the month. Is this what your life looks like at that time? Are you frantically trying to get a hold of your builders and anybody else that's going to place an order just so that you can get to the rank that you're trying to qualify at? Well, if this is you, you're not the only one. Many people have been there. But this is not good. It's not good for you. It's not good for your builders and leaders and your team. You burn them out. You make people feel like they're being used and that all you need is for you to rank advance. They don't care about you rank advancing. So I want you to think about this for a second. The last day of the month is not an emergency. It happens very predictably every month. So I'm sure you've heard this. If you fail to plan, you got it, you plan to fail. So the key is planning for the end of the month. And so I want to introduce to you Business Builder Worksheets. This is something that Elise and I have used ever since the very beginning of our building with doTERRA. And we did it not on fancy papers or sheets like you have right here, and not like what we're going to go through today, but in essence, all of the calculations and all of the planning that takes place, we did it from the very first month we were in doTERRA. We just needed to look at where we're at, what we're missing to get to our rank, and make a plan to make up that difference. And that's what these are all for. We have builder worksheets all the way from elite for every rank all the way up to diamond. So let's break it down a little bit and walk through an example of how you would use one of these. So let's have a look at the Gold Builder Worksheet. So this is the Gold Builder Worksheet, and you may notice that it looks very much like a Premier Builder Worksheet. In fact, it's made up of 3 Premier Builder Worksheets. So you can see that you have the first one on the left is your first page for your first Premier leg. And then the middle one is Gold Builder Worksheet Part 2. And the one on the right is Gold Builder Worksheet Part 3 for your third Premier leg. So since the Gold Builder Worksheet is made up of 3 Premier Builder Worksheets, and in reality you're going to be making sure that your builders that need to qualify as Premier are filling out the Premier Builder Worksheet so that you can go Gold, I'll just simply show you an example of how to fill out a Premier Builder worksheet. And so I'll be talking to you as if you're just filling out a Premier Builder worksheet. Here is the Premier Builder worksheet. Now I want to break this down a little bit. There are 3 steps in the Premier Builder worksheet. So let's just zero in on this step number 1. First of all, Premier rank is achieved by leading 2 qualifying legs to Executive, which is 2,000 OV, and having a total OV for yourself of 5,000. Okay, so this sheet is broken down into 3 different columns. First, you have on the left, you have your executive, your first executive leg, the middle column, your second executive leg, and then on the right hand, extra volume that you need that's outside of those executive legs that will help you to get to Premier. So let's jump right in and go through the nuts and bolts of how this works. So let's start with the first leg on the left. The first thing that you need to do in step 1 is add up all of the scheduled LRP orders in leg 1. Now let me ask you, why do we use the LRP orders that are scheduled? Well, simply put, this is the most accurate prediction of what next month's volume is. If you just simply look at what last month's volume was when you're filling out these builder worksheets, that's not super accurate because you have a bunch of enrollment kits perhaps there. Maybe there was a big promotion. So it's not the most accurate predictor. We found that the most accurate predictor is the actual LRPs that are scheduled in the back office. So you just need to go look those up in your virtual office, and then you add up all of the next LRP orders for the coming month, and you enter that amount right here. Next step, you subtract 2,000 from that. And so in this case, you had, let's say, all of your LRP orders that are scheduled is 2,312 OV. Then you subtract 2,000 from that, you're left with 312. Now the next step is actually if you look at the parentheses below number 2 where it says subtract 2,000, if it is above 0, enter 0. Why is that? Well, simply put, for that leg to be qualified as executive, you need 2,000 OV. And since you have 2,312 OV, you're 312 points over for it to be executive. So you don't need any more volume. And so what I want you to do is cross out, if it's over, you cross out what's over, and you just put simply 0. In other words, you don't need any more volume in order for that leg to be qualified as executive. Now, point number 3, this is where you determine the number of classes that are needed in order for that leg to qualify as executive. Well, since the scheduled LRP is already over 2,000 and you don't need any more volume, obviously you don't need any more classes, right? And that's what you get if you take 0 divided by 500. You get a big fat 0. So you don't need to do any more classes to qualify for that leg to qualify as executive. Now, if you look at the 4th point there, there's a question. Do you need classes? And if the answer is yes, then you enter 2,000 here. But in our case, you don't need any more classes here. So what you're going to do is you're going to enter the total from box 1. You might be wondering, what's this for? This is simply a calculation step that is necessary for you to be able to figure out how much volume outside of legs 1 and 2 that you'll need. And so we'll get back to that in just a little bit. So right now, let's shift over to the middle column, executive leg 2. You add up all of your scheduled LRP. In this case, let's say it comes out to 1,429. You subtract 2,000. Now you get negative 571. The negative is simply telling you that you're short volume in order for that leg to be executive. You're short 571 points, to be exact in this case. Then you take that and you divide it by 500, and you get negative 1.142. What that's telling you is that you're short 1.142 classes in order for that leg to qualify as executive. Now, why are we doing 500, by the way? This is really important for you to understand. So 500 is the average volume that will come from a class if you follow all the steps that we teach in sampling correctly, following up correctly, inviting people to classes once they've had a great experience with the oils, and then teaching the class the way that we show. And if you do all of these steps correctly, including the close and everything, you should be able to get to an average of 500 points per class. Okay, so that's why we're using the 500 points here. So again, if you're going to teach, if you're short 1.142 classes, have you ever taught 1.142 classes? Well, of course not. Although sometimes it feels like it, if you have nobody show up for a class or something like that, or maybe just one person. But in any case, you're not going to schedule or plan to teach 1.142 classes. So I always round it so that I have to teach more classes. So basically, I'm going to tell myself, I'm not short only one class, I'm short 2 classes. Because if I say I'm short only one class, and so I plan and schedule a class, and I bring in the 500 points, I'm still going to be a few points short of reaching that goal. So I always overschedule classes by a little bit, and that's how I did that right here. I said instead of teaching only one class or being one class short, I'm going to plan that I'm 2 classes short. Okay. Again, number 4, the calculation. Do I need classes? In this case, yes, I need 2 classes. So I'm going to put 2,000 here. And what that tells me basically is by the end of the month, I'm expecting to have 2,000 points in that leg, assuming I do my 2 classes and I bring it up to, I do well enough to at least bring that volume up to 2,000. Okay, now let's go to the extra volume. As you know, you need 5,000 points. So if you have 2 executive legs of 2,000, you're only at 4,000 points, and you need another 1,000 points to get to 5,000, right? Or in this case, one of your legs has more because you have LRP scheduled of 2,312. So you might not need quite as much as 1,000 points. So let's go through that calculation. So now what you're going to do is you're going to add up all of the scheduled LRP orders that are not in leg 1 or leg 2. That's why we said add up all scheduled LRP orders outside leg 1 and 2. So let's say in this case you come up with 364. You add to that the numbers from box 4 in both legs, right? So the 2,312 from the executive leg 1 and the 2,000 from executive leg 2. and you add to that the 364 that you have here that are in legs outside of those two, and you end up with 4,676. You subtract 5,000, and you notice that you're 324 points short of having that 5,000 OV. So how many classes does that translate into? Well, you divide it by 500, you get negative 0.648, showing that you're negative 0.648 classes. Well, you're not going to do a fraction of a class, so you're going to say, well, I'm short one class to get extra volume. All right. So this tells you, if you look at the three boxes that are a little bit highlighted with the darker box around it, in executive leg 1, you don't need any classes for it to be executive. In executive leg 2, you need 2 classes in order for that leg to qualify as executive. And additionally from that, you need another class anywhere in your organization. It could be in either one of those legs, or it could be under somebody who's not in either of those legs. All right. So now let's go over to step 2 of this Premier Builder worksheet. Step 2 is to create an action plan for each builder and sharer that are on your team in each of those legs. So again, you still see these 3 columns. The left column is executive leg 1, the middle column is executive leg 2, and the right column is extra volume outside of those legs. All right. So you can see here that we're supposed to list the top 3 builders and sharers in leg 1 and in basically leg 2 and outside of those as well. So let's list those. Let's say you have Sally, Jennifer, and Peter in leg 1. You have Suzanne and Mary in leg 2. And outside of that, you just have Vanessa. Okay. And so those are the people that you have to work with. The next step is schedule the classes that are needed from step 1, right, that we just figured out a little bit ago, and schedule those classes to happen by the 3rd Friday of the month. So why do we want to have the classes to happen by the 3rd Friday of the month? And simply put, we're trying to build in a safety net here, a safety factor in our planning process. So let's just suppose you disregard this advice and you schedule your class for October 31st, the last day of the month. Okay, and you think, oh, that's great, awesome. But then you forget and don't realize, oh my goodness, that's Halloween and everybody's families are out, and you're not going to have anybody come to that class, right? And so that last class is going to be a bomb. And what do you do if your last class gets canceled, or nobody shows up, or nobody buys anything? Well, then if it's on the last day of the month or the next to last day of the month, you don't have any time to make up that difference. You're out of luck. But if you schedule all of the classes to happen before the 3rd Friday of the month, that means you've got over a week left in the month in case you come short for whatever reason. And so you always, within that last week, you can schedule another class just to make up whatever that shortage is. And yeah, it might not be a perfect class. You might not have as much prep time, but you have enough to get a class in, and so you can get some of that extra volume that you might be missing. So this is a very critical point in your planning process, just to make sure that you have a safety net, a buffer, so to speak. All right. So let's move on. So we know that in your executive leg 1, we didn't need to schedule any classes, so we don't need to write that down. That doesn't mean that you ignore that leg. Obviously, you'll want to keep working with that builder and the people in that team to help them continue moving forward, because once you're premier, your next step is you're going to want to be silver. So you're going to want to make sure that that leg qualifies as elite, right? So you just kind of help them move forward. But as far as for you going premier, let's focus here really quickly on leg 2, your executive leg 2, where we needed 2 classes, right, from the previous slides. And so you're going to talk to Suzanne, you're going to talk to Mary, and you're going to schedule some classes with them. And in this case, let's suppose that they're builders and sharers and they're capable of teaching and hosting their own classes. So June 3rd, you schedule a class for Mary. Mary's going to be the host. Mary's going to be the presenter. It's at 7 p.m. You don't even need to show up necessarily. Okay. And let's say you schedule another class with Suzanne on June 7th at 6 p.m. Again, Suzanne's going to be the host. Suzanne's going to be the presenter. Awesome. You're good to go. Okay, now let's take Vanessa in the 3rd column to the right. Vanessa's not a builder. She's just a sharer. She's willing to host a class for you, but she doesn't know how to present. So in this case, you might need to be the presenter, even though Vanessa's the host. You scheduled on June 3rd. You notice that I put the same date here for Vanessa's class and Mary's class. Is that a problem? No, because you don't need to be at the class with Mary. Okay. So in this way, you could have multiple classes scheduled on the same day. So you don't need to worry about them all being on different days or whatever, as long as you have people that are willing and able to teach some of those classes as well. Okay. So you'll notice all of these classes are scheduled as close to the beginning of the month as possible. That gives us extra time. So let's say that class at Vanessa's place turns out to be a dud and nobody signs up. Or what if you do have some people sign up, but it's less than the 500 OV of volume that comes in from that class? Well, June 3rd, you still have the whole rest of the month to schedule and plan another class somewhere so that you can make up that shortage in volume. So you can see how having these buffers and trying to schedule the classes as close to the beginning of the month as possible, how it's super helpful. All right. So now let's move on to step 3, which is setting an incentive for each builder and share that you're working with here. Because you need to remember that just because you want to go Premiere doesn't mean that Mary, Suzanne, or Vanessa care to go Premiere or care to do any of the work for you to get to Premiere, right? So they don't have anything to gain out of it, but you do. You have the empowerment bonus. You've got an extra level of unilevel that you can get. You have the rank advancement that you can, you feel great about. So seeing that it's not their goal, then it's really important that you do something to make sure that it becomes their goal in some sense. So that Mary has an incentive to hold that class, so that Suzanne does and Vanessa does as well. Because if something goes wrong and they don't have any incentive, they might not want to do it at all. They might just say, "Oh, I'm canceling that class. It just wasn't worth it," or whatever, right? So let's say for Mary, you decide you're going to babysit for a night. Maybe what Mary needs, she decided to build this business and her husband's not super on board and she's spending a lot of time on her business. And what they really need is to be able to go out on a date together, husband and wife. And so maybe you can just babysit for that night so that they can go. Maybe that's the most important thing for her. See, it doesn't cost you anything and either. Or maybe for Suzanne, what she really wants is an essential life book. So you say, Suzanne, you do this class, I'll buy you an essential life book. Okay. Or for Vanessa, you can, as a hostess, you might want to give her a keychain with oils depending on how many people show up for that class. All right. So these incentives, those are really, really critical things for you to do with those that don't have their own internal incentive to do the things that they need to do for you to qualify as Premier. So that, in a nutshell, is how you would fill out the Premier Builder Worksheet. Now, I want you to keep in mind that the plan you start with is never the one that gets you there. So you're going to write out this plan. You're going to fill out this Premier Builder Worksheet right at the very beginning of the month. So by the first day of the month, you want to have this Builder Worksheet filled out and your classes all scheduled so you can pack everything as close to the beginning of the month as possible so that you have enough time to fill in for buffers, extra classes if anything doesn't go right. And so what you're going to do is you're going to make that plan. You're going to make the plan as ideal as possible. But if something goes wrong, a class cancels, you get less volume at a class, then you could always fill it in. You keep adjusting it. So what I want you to do is have that plan handy and throughout the month, visit it every week and readjust as things go well or wrong. Just make any adjustments you need to that plan so that you're not frantic at the end of the month. And so you can achieve this with the Business Builder Worksheets, whether you're going for Elite, going for Premier, going for Silver, Gold, Platinum, or Diamond. There's builder worksheets that you can use to help you plan and prepare so that you can achieve that rank as well as possible. And if you do that properly, this is how your end of the month should look like. Not like that frantic lady that was at the very beginning of this presentation, where she had like 5 phones that she was calling and frantically trying to get a hold of people. Because if you plan well, you should be able to achieve your goals before the last minute of the month. Okay? Now, There may be some exceptions where, despite all of your planning, despite all of your safety nets that you have, and things go wrong and you still have to scramble a little bit at the end of the month, that's not the end of the world. But at least that's not going to be the rule for you. It's going to be more of an exception rather than what happens on a constant basis. I want to show you this picture. I love this picture because this is our good friends and Presidential Diamonds, Kyle and Kirsten Kirschbaum. And I remember getting this picture from them on the last day of the month when they went Blue Diamond for the very first time. Now you'll notice on the bottom right corner, there's golf clubs. So this is them going golfing on the last day of the month. Why? Because they had already hit their goal before the end of the month. So they had nothing to be frantic about. They were good. They were there. Wouldn't it be much nicer for you to rank events like this every month than for you to be frantic at the end of the month? So that's what I want you to shoot for. I want you to remember this. There are some people who live in a dream world, and there are some who face reality. And then there are those who turn one into the other. So I want you to go and turn your dream world into reality, but make sure you plan to make it happen, and make sure you keep yourself some safety nets and buffers so that you can make adjustments as necessary to that plan so that you can reach your goal. Thank you very much and have a great day.